And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be going into a city. In fact, 6 different guilds within a city, and we're going to be trying to gain some influence in those guilds. Too little influence and we just won't get anything accomplished. Too much influence and we just won't be that effective because everybody will find us out. So we're trying to find an equilibrium in the city. We're calling this Intrigue City. This is from Purple Games. It's from 2 to 5 players, 60 to 90 minutes. It's kind of like a hybrid Euro-American style game. Let's take a look and I'll show you how it's played and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, Intrigue City is set up. We have the main board here with some cards that are randomly distributed at the beginning of the game. We have some equilibrium cards, some favorite cards, and some player boards there. Let's dig into what you're trying to do in this game. Overall, you're trying to get an equilibrium, which is the right amount of influence in these different guilds. And there's Crescent Moon and Dreamers and Brotherhood of Steel and Eternal Seekers, Dragon's Blood, and Raven Lords. Trying to get the right amount of influence throughout the game, that's going to be the bulk of your points. Well, how do you do that? Well, here's our player board. We see those 6 different guilds that I just talked about right there. We have some cubes on them. Whites are worth 1, yellows are worth 2, and reds are worth 3, and you're trying to get an equilibrium, and in this game is always 6. On the player board, you see all the different combinations that you can make up of 6. So, for instance, if this you're going to be manipulating both your board and you're going to be attacking other players' boards. So if you were manipulating your own board and you were able to move the 1 there, that would be a 6. If you got equilibrium there by the end of the round and kept it there, you would get an equilibrium card for this Eternal Seekers Guild. These are just basically equilibrium cards, and this is how you're going to get the bulk of your points at the end game scoring. So overall, you're trying to gain equilibrium in these different guilds, but let's talk about how a turn works. Essentially, it's a worker placement mechanic. Everybody gets a black meeple and a gray meeple. A black meeple means you're going to select an action, and you're going to do that onto an offensive attack on another player's board. A gray meeple is a defense, which means whatever action you take, you basically do it on your own board. And so there's different actions, and these are all randomly set up depending on the amount of players. For instance, if we have 4 players, these are filled. If there are 5 players, these are filled. Also, there's a different amount of these shuffled together. Some of the ones with the stars are advanced cards. The ones that don't have those are basic. And some of those get shuffled in depending on the game. So it's a random assignment of where they are and which cards they are every game. So it's different every time. These 2 are actually on the board. Those are always there. The rest of them are randomly put at the beginning of the game. So let's take a look a little closer at what some of these do. So let's look at this. The scapegoat actually just does nothing. But you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spiders, which stands for intrigue. If I took that action, just did nothing, I would move my my counter up to 5. The way the score track works is very interesting. If you've ever played the game Thebes, it's similar to that, where let's just say some of the people were like lined up like this. Whoever is in last, has the least amount of intrigue, will go next. So if green took an action that didn't have a lot of intrigue and moved there, then blue would probably move, and then purple, because he's underneath, would move, and then green went. So green might actually move twice before somebody else, depending on which movements they're taking as they go down in intrigue. So it's an interesting score, turn order, intrigue track that tells you who goes when. Also, so there's different things here. So this one says, pick any guild, and then you can either put a red cube on from the supply or take a red cube off. And again, depending on which one of these you put on, you're going to be doing that to someone else's board with black or your own board with gray. And you only get 1 of these. You're only getting 2 turns per round. Now for disturb balance, you're targeting a guild and you're taking a non-adjacent guild, and you're taking a cube from that and putting it into the chosen guild, the target guild, and then you're taking 1 from the target guild and putting 1 back in the adjacent guild. That just can't be equal. It can't be the same cube. And bribery is taking a yellow cube on or off any guild. Manipulation's doing the same thing but with a white cube. Seductive words is taking any adjacent guild and moving a cube to the targeted guild. For redistribute power, essentially your chosen guild is getting 1, and then they're also getting another 1 from a non-adjacent guild. Change of plans essentially is getting 1 from a non-adjacent guild. And old debts is pretty much you can put one on, take one off, or move one from any region to it. It's pretty much a little bit of everything. And you'll see as I zoom out here that the different actions have different amounts of intrigue. 1 in this row, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that's how much you move up or down on these score tracks of the intrigue track, which helps that turn order. Now when I do a defensive, anytime you take a defensive action, like if I was to pick one that allowed me to move this white cube over here, I now have, anytime you take a defensive action, the guild that you targeted, you get what's called a favor card for that color guild. So we have the brown on the brown. And what this means is, and if we actually have an equilibrium at this time, we get to flip it over to the cool side. And they just help you give, you can play these anytime. They're pretty much like special abilities, where next time if I wanted to go on an occupied spot, when I'm doing a defensive maneuver, I can, and it gives me 1 intrigue. Because normally you can only go on 1 person per spot, but this allows me to break that rule. And these different favor cards do different things like that. And the different guilds have different ones for these favor cards. For instance, when you're using a black meeple, they can go on a spot that's occupied if you have the red one. This one's when you're attacking, you can use that same guild that you're attacking on your own board and move a white cube, to or from it. Same with the black one, sort of when you're attacking, you can use it. The blue and the greens are when you're being attacked, that's what the shield's for. You can basically, move cubes or put cubes on or off. So they're just special abilities of the different guilds that you can use. So this is a different player's board, and maybe on my turn, on my offensive action, I'll see he has equilibrium here, and so maybe I use a card that removes a yellow cube from his board. I use that card, and now he no longer has equilibrium, so you're constantly trying to defend yourself and fight off other people to try to be getting those equilibriums. So after everybody has done 2 turns, which is 1 offensive and 1 defensive action, we look around, anybody that has an equilibrium will get an equilibrium card from that guild. This essentially is points at the end of the game. I'll talk to you about that later. And then essentially you would start a new round. So if we were done with the first round, we'd go to the second. At the end of every 2 rounds, there's different errors. You can see they're Roman numerals here. And we go through a voting process at the era. Now, what are we voting on? Everyone has these guild power decks of their color. So I'm the purple color on the board. And so you would take 3 of these cards, and from these 3, you would decide which one you're going to use to vote. So this one is a purple, this one is a brown, and this one is a blue. Now, I had 1 brown equilibrium, which means that I can make the amount of points that this is worth at the end of the game go up, depending on the amount of players. If there's 4 players, it would go up 2, 2 or 3, and so on and so forth. And not all of them are like that. Some of them are just, hey, they go up a specific amount of spots. So let's say those are the 3 cards I drew. I pick one of them, and I vote face down in the middle of the board. The other 2 get discarded. Then everyone flips over their cards at the same time, and we see which ones go up in points. So the brown guild went up 2 with mine, so it's 3, and maybe somebody else made it go up 2, and then maybe this one went, and then maybe this one went. And so every other round, this voting is going on, and these cubes are moving up during the game as people vote. And so you're trying to get the equilibrium in the ones that are being up most, or you're trying to manipulate and push up the ones that you have equilibrium in. Now the last 2 eras, when you get past round 6 and you go to 3rd and the 4th era, everybody votes like before, but instead of showing everybody puts their vote underneath the board, or just together, and at the end of the game, all those cards get flipped up. So the last 2 eras, you're not really sure what people are voting for, so you can't be exactly sure which ones to go for. And at the end of the game, we have a scoring process. The person who has the most intrigue, which was the highest on this movement board, will get the spider card, and they would get 3 points. Anybody that has these favor cards, we told you anytime you make a defensive move on your board, you get a favor card, and if at the time you had an equilibrium, it would get face up to this flashing sign. This is just a more powerful version of the card. For every one of these you didn't use, you get 1 point. Then for every person person that has the most unique types of equilibrium cards, so maybe I had brown, blue, and red, I would have 3. So whoever has the most unique one is going to get 5 points. If anybody has exactly a combination of 36 on their board from the colors, red, yellow, and white, remembering how much they're worth, you'd get 5 points, and then we would add up your equilibrium cards. So based upon how much these were worth at the end of the game, each equilibrium card is going to be worth that much. You add those up, and whoever has the most points at the end is the winner. All right, well, there's Intrigue City. Well, the first interesting thing is that this game is from Greece, and they partnered with a non-profit organization called Schema plus Chroma and helped them gain their own goals, those non-profit goals, because they printed this at a facility that's like the center of helping therapeutic dependent individuals. So they partnered with a non-profit to print their games, which helped both of them, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, on to the game. I thought this has a very unique mix of mechanics. That intrigue track, that's kind of like the score track in Thieves, the time track, where the lowest one's going to go first, and you can take an action. Do you want to take a little action and then go again, or do you want to go way up and possibly be last? I love that mechanic in Thieves, and I really liked it here. It was very unique. The different, how the game plays with every time it's different, because you're always going to have different cards in the deck of those action cards, those intrigue cards, but not only are they going to be different cards, they're going to be randomly assigned. So some of them might be more intrigue or less intrigue, and I love how that gave sort of the replayability value of this. There's also tons of variants of set up specific cards you would use as those intrigues, of different ways to play the game. So replayability value was big on this, and the interesting mix of mechanics was interesting with this. It was kind of like a logic puzzle where you're trying to figure out how to get the right amount of 6. And I love that it was kind of like a very puzzly nature. I would call it brain burnery, but there is a lot of thinking involved, because when you're trying to figure out where to place your worker, and you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's left, and how can I manipulate mine, or how can I manipulate his, and see what cards they might have to combat those. So there is a lot of thinking. It does have a lot of AP potential. If you play this with somebody who thinks a lot before their turn, you will be snoozing by the time it gets back to your turn, which was one downside, is we had someone that took a little longer during the play, and it really just felt a little slower. If even one person can really slow down the game. But if you don't play with someone AP, it should move more quickly. So all in all, the mechanics themselves were so unique that I did like it. I tend to like these hybrid games where it's, you know, half Euro, half American style. There was obviously half the turns you're attacking and half the turns you're defending. So it's one of those games where you won't really figure out what you're really trying to be doing until after you've played it once, twice, 3 times. You know, you really need to play it multiple times to really understand, I guess, the strategies of what you should be trying to do, whether you should take your defensive active first or your offensive, and see what cards people have. So it's not one of those games where you're going to play once and be like, oh, okay, I got everything figured out. I like it. Let's do it again. It's one of those ones like, oh, let's peel back the onion a little further. So I think this one requires multiple plays before you could really dive deep into the strategy of it. It's really good. It's really unique. I really like also that every era where you're making those votes to try to push up the places that you have equilibrium in. And then the last 2 eras where it's secret, that I really like that mechanic. I also found that in this game, whoever's in the lead, or whoever appears to be in the lead, gets pounced by everybody, which, if you don't like that, you probably won't like this game. I mean, there's a time where someone was a leader and all 3 of us took our offensive actions against them to make sure they had no chance of getting more of those purple equilibrium cards. They ended up still winning, but regardless. So if you don't like direct combat or contact, direct attacking other players, you probably won't like this. If you don't mind it so much, but you still like the Euro, it's kind of like that mid-tween, then you probably will want to check this one out. All in all, interesting mechanics, interesting theme, a lot to think about. I'm not so sure they all came together to make a fantastic game, but it is definitely a good, solid game, and one that if those mechanics line up to something that you like, you're definitely going to want to try this one out. Intrigue City.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at DicetowerNetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.